Hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Eric Betteridge. Jen Adams and I are the creators of Log Drivers Waltz bikepacking route. For us, this is a passion project. In order to keep barriers to entry low, we don't charge for anything that we do, whether it's the route, sessions like this, or the bikepacking rallies. We'll say that there are some costs that are associated with us doing this, and we are happy to receive donations, but it's by no means necessary. This panel is part of our ongoing effort to create an inclusive and welcoming bikepacking environment or culture here in the Gatineau and Ottawa valleys. We're hosting this discussion as part of our hashtag Bikepacking for All initiative. And our long-term goal is to have 50% of the people at the Log Drivers Waltz Grand Depart from traditionally underrepresented groups. A little description of about the Log Drivers Waltz. It's a multi-day route, and it traverses an incredible amount of different terrain through the Ottawa Valley and the Outaouais. And it actually passes right through downtown Ottawa along the Rideau Canal, which is a World Heritage Site, and right behind the Parliament buildings. And then several kilometers later, you're actually with no cell service. The reason that we created the route was to encourage people to explore this region by bicycle. And people are obviously welcome to ride the route at any time in any manner that they so choose. The only restriction is that between November 15th and May 15th, you can't ride through the Gatineau Park. As is tradition with many bikepacking routes, there is a Grand Depart on the Log Drivers Waltz. This will be the third summer. This year it will take place on July 13th. It's an invitation for people to show up and ride the route at the same time. So it gives people an opportunity to have other people around, meet other people who like bikepacking, and just have a bit of camaraderie. It is a self-supported, I mean, bikepacking by definition is self-supported, and it's a challenge by choice. So you can decide how hard you want to ride, how long you want to ride, whether you want to stay in hotels as much as camping or just sleep on picnic benches. It's really entirely up to you. Being self-supported, it means that riders are fully responsible for their own navigation and their well-being. There is no insurance, there's no support. If you have a breakdown, you need to be able to look after yourself. One thing that happened soon, actually, after we put the route up, was somebody emailed and said, what are the rules for the fastest known time on the Log Drivers Waltz? And fastest known time actually is a pretty informal thing where people try to ride the route as quickly as possible, self-supported. That's really essentially it. They need to follow the route. And it definitely is appealing to quite a number of people to do the route that way, but it's also appealing to many people to tour the route, to swim in every lake, and to stop at every coffee shop or brewery, whatever turns their, whatever your interests are. Last year, we added what we call the half demi, which is a route that is about half the length. And we found that a number of people have found this to be a really nice way to enter into bikepacking. On the panel today, we have Christina Wietinghoff, John Schwarbrick, Sarah Kaler, Roland Fletcher, Matthew Cady, and Mike Feldman. And each of them has taken a different approach to riding the Log Drivers Waltz. As a result, and this is true for all riders, each has had their unique experience. So same but different. I'll just start at top left with our friend Matthew Cady.
Okay, well, thanks for the introduction. Just be quick. My real life job is a nutrition journalist and food writer. And then my side hustle is, I guess, route developer, as most people would know, including the BT 700 routes in Ontario. And a fairly long new one called the Great Northern Bikepacking Route that maybe we can talk about a little later. Yeah, and I did the Log Drivers Waltz, what year? 2023. So I have to remember the aspects of that.
And one thing people should know is that you're a really strong mentor for Jen and I as we got into this as newbies. So we really appreciate what you've done for bike packing in this region. Sean Swarbeck.
Can you hear me all right, Eric?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this. You and Jen and Matt as well. Fantastic mentors in this whole community we have going. I started riding bike packing, horsing around. Ended up riding the BT 700 a few times, and then the Log Drivers Waltz I did with Matt in 2023. It was like a soaking experience. So I came back in 2024 so I could actually see what the course looked like. And it was amazing. And I'm a retired teacher. I run a renovation company. And I love riding. I love everything about bike packing. And yeah, I think it's fantastic what you guys are doing for the community. And it's just really appreciate being included today.
Great. Thank you, John. And you're coming back this next year, it seems. So you will have 3 under your belt, which is
well, yeah. Matt has promised to come back again with me, and he apparently this time he's doing all the cooking.
Yeah.
So I'm stoked. I'm stoked.
Careful what you wish for.
Roland.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, hi, I'm Roland, everyone. Roland Fletcher. Thanks for inviting me on the panel to share my experience. I live in Toronto, downtown Toronto. I grew up in Scarborough, which is just east of the city. Like all kids, I grew up riding a bike, but there's a big gap between riding as a kid and then connecting with the bike later on. So my wife actually introduced me to cycling in 2017, just purely utility. We live downtown. It's the easiest way to get around Toronto. And it became just utility. Then we did a few longer rides along the lake shore. And then before you know it, we're joining clubs and doing group rides. I do a lot of stuff on the road. I race crits and road races. I race on the track, and really just trying to experience the bike in as many different ways as I can. And bike packing was put on the radar for me. And Log Drivers Waltz was introduced to me last year by a friend, and I'm glad that I took part. It was a phenomenal experience, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Awesome. Thank you, Roland. And I just have a quick question for you. How does track cycling prepare you for bike packing?
They're both thrilling at times, I guess. When you're good descending a gravel, hill, it's kind of similar to coming down the bank of on the velodrome with a corner right up ahead of you. So you build up nerves in different ways, I guess, but I think there's some crossover there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Christina, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Wiedinghoff, and I'm from Fredericton, New Brunswick. But I've lived in Toronto, Ottawa, Grenoble in France, and I currently live in Montreal. It's really neat to hear Roland speaking because it's throwing me back to remembering when we crossed paths in Gatineau Park, like kind of near the very end of the Log Drivers Waltz, and we were both completely toast. But I did the Log Drivers Waltz Grand Depart last summer. And prior to that, my background, I started really in bike touring. I think one of my first bigger trips was with some friends in 2015. And then I spent a year traveling by bike from 2017 to 2018. I biked part of the BT 700 on my dad's old steel hardtail. It was way too big for me. I think that was like 2020 or 2021. And I really love kind of pushing myself and going out of my comfort zone. And that's what led me to the log driver's waltz.
Thank you. And could you describe the tires that you rode the log driver's waltz on, please?
Yeah, my philosophy is like the bike I have is generally good enough, which I don't know if that proved true with the log driver's waltz, but I had slick Rene Hersey tires that I'm blanking 650 48s. And yeah, I did crash a couple times, but they also helped me bike really fast.
Just so everybody knows, Christina actually rode the fastest of everybody, but she slept the longest. So and was and then was first woman. Michael Feldman.
Greetings from south of the border. I live in New York State, right on the Adirondack Trail Ride route. I want to thank Matt and Eric and Jen and Mikey and Tropartola who put together the Adirondack Trail Ride, which I'll call Tater from now on. Amazing amount of work that goes into developing these routes. Truly impressive, the time commitment that you all put into it. I came to the Log Driver's Waltz because my wife wanted to do the St. Lawrence Triple Crown. And so I signed up and tagged along and made it my summer vacation. So yeah, I guess that's basically it.
And we should mention that you were the first person to complete what's called the St. Lawrence Bikepacking Triple Crown Challenge, which is to ride all 3 Grand Departs in 1 year. And by that, you also became the owner of the fastest known time for the St. Lawrence Bikepacking Triple Crown. So
Yeah.
I know that's not why you did it, but it sometimes things fall in your lap, so nobody can ever take that away from you. But we'll talk more about different routes, and especially you're our Tater expert here this evening.
Well, I just want to say too, Eric, that I know I didn't set the bar very high. So it's out there for whoever wants to take it next.
It's an achievement, Mike. I mean, just to ride those. It's really cool. Sarah Kaler. Hi.
Hello. Long time listener, first time Zoomer. I want to say hi to everybody. I'm Sarah. I hope you can hear me okay. Again, I'm new to this. I'm a longtime mountain biker. I was competing usually for the most part in endurance racing and XC racing for years and years and years. And somewhere around 2012, I watched a little movie called Ride the Divide and just figured I was showing it mountain equipment down in Toronto. And I got the bug. I don't know why. I didn't know anyone that had bike packed before. And I thought, well, let's give this thing a try. That looks pretty cool. So I found some bags and headed off and did the Tour Divide just for shits and giggles, so to speak. Anyway, the bike pack bug pretty much bit. And since then I've done a bunch more things, including here in Ontario, the Log Driver's Waltz and the BT 700 a bunch of times. I continue to endurance race, cross country and 24 solo, marathon racing, that kind of thing, but I'm predominantly a mountain biker. So this whole new gravel scene is pretty new to me. I tend to race predominantly on a single speed mountain bike. That's sort of my MO, and that's what I use for both BT and log drivers. And I hope to do it again and again and again. I know I have a plan to do an ITT on the BT 700 this year, and I'd love to squeeze in the log drivers waltz. I can't thank you guys, all of you, all 3 of you, so much for making these routes for us to play on, because they're so fantastic in our own backyard. But yeah, that's me. Lots of things ahead and lots of things behind. So I don't know what to say.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to bring out the point that you did ride the log driver's waltz on a single speed, and you actually are the first woman to do that, and so that was cool. In fact, we had 4 single speeds last year, which
Yeah,
is
yay.
really neat. The other thing is you don't confine yourself just to biking. We hear that you might be attempting to run the Bruce Trail this summer.
I am. Yeah, that's the big plan. I thought I'm getting older and I wanted to do something different before I get too old. So I thought I'd try for an FKT attempt on a self-supported Bruce Trail run heading down. Haven't figured out yet if I'm going to leave from the south and go north or from the north and go south. We're still working on all the logistics that are going to make this happen, but I'm hoping to attempt that either the last week of July, first week August, somewhere around there. So that's a big one.
Very cool. We're going to move into some sort of rapid fire questions. Just try to cover some topics. So I will direct this one to Matthew, actually, because I know he's got an opinion. Chamois versus no chamois.
Never a chamois again. I never want to see it ever again.
Can you tell us why? We need just tell us why you say that.
I don't really like riding diapers anymore. I can ride now with never having a saddle sore and never needing to use cream. It's probably been the best move I've ever done for cycling, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Michael Feldman, stove or cold soak?
Cold soak all the way.
And why is that?
It's faster. On the log driver's Waltz, I attempted a self-sufficient ride where I wasn't going to go into any stores, so I carried all my own food.
Okay. And so for those who don't know, cold soak is what?
Oh, cold soak is what I use is dehydrated pinto bean flakes or black bean and or eggs. And instead of heating up water, usually 2 to 3 hours before, I'll just put in the appropriate amount of water into the bag, seal it, and then put it in my jersey. And my body heats it up. And in 2 to 3 hours, it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Nice.
Excellent.
So like for the log drivers I carried, I think I had 10 tortillas and probably 20 packs of Taco Bell sauce. And yeah, that got me through pretty much. Although I did have a pizza hand up and a beer hand up. So in essence, I failed.
Well, thank you. John Schwarbeck, drop bars or straight bars?
Oh, I ride both, but I prefer drop bars for sure. I like the way it feels. I'm used to riding. I've ridden for many years now, drop bars on the road and gravel, and that's my preference for bike packing.
And why is that?
When I ride fat bike a lot, even though Matt makes he said I only get to go out 3 times a year. There's more. And mountain bike always just feels like just feels slower to me. A drop bar just feels like a better position. It is a little bit of a challenge sometimes in sort of technical riding, or if it's really choppy or really rocky or rooty, I would prefer to go with a flat bar. But it just makes me feel like I'm riding a mountain bike. It's like I don't like it. So when I'm doing long rides, I really enjoy the drop bars. I have a set of cow chippers on there. They're nice and wide. I can fit a lot of stuff in there. It just feels right, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Christina, suspension or rigid bike?
Rigid for me.
And why would that be?
I guess again with my philosophy that that's what I have, and it's working relatively well. Although I've had friends tell me maybe you would help me with single track to go with suspension, but I'm pretty happy with my bikes.
Okay, thank you. Roland, I don't know if you had flat pedals or clipless pedals when you were riding.
I rode with clipless, like mountain bike pedals. I think for the terrain, that worked well with the shoes I had. They didn't get too like chunked up with dirt or rocks or anything like that. So that worked well for me. And I think for some of the more technical sections, from my experience at least, I don't have a lot of experience with flat pedals, but I find being connected to the pedal can get you around some technical spots a little more easier. That's just my experience.
Excellent, thank you. I guess Michael didn't stop anywhere, so I can't really ask him this question. So I'll put it out to, actually, I'll stick with you, Roland. Coffee shop or brewery? Where are you going to stop?
Before 3 p.m., I'll hit up the coffee shop, but after 3, definitely brewery.
Okay, so and there's a few of each on the route, so you have lots of options.
Got options.
Thinking about sleep systems, Sarah, quilt or sleeping bag? Or did you take a sleep system?
I took neither. I did take an emergency bivy and a small sleeping pad, and that's what I use. But normally I am a sleeping bag person. However, that's because that's what I have. And as we all know that ultralight stuff is very expensive, I have not been able to upgrade to a quilt, but it is something I would really like to try. Everybody I know uses a quilt and say they're absolutely in love with them. So my next big purchase would be a really great quilt. I tend to be a really cold sleeper, so I like something that's warm. The only reason I didn't take anything on log drivers, and I generally don't if it's going to be less than a week out there, it's just it's easier and it's faster, and I know the temperature is going to be okay. For anything longer, I'm definitely taking a tiny tent and a sleeping bag and an air mattress because sleep is pretty important. I'm older now and long gone are the days when I can just keep pushing right through the night. Although I still do, I pay for it, but I'd prefer to have a good rest and get good sleep, and then I ride much better the next day. So for now, it's sleeping bag, future quilt.
And get your sleep.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Matthew, thinking back, you actually wrote it in 2022. 2023 was last year. John somehow managed to write it in 2024 already, but I'm not sure how he did that when he was introducing himself. But you wrote it in 2022. Thinking back to 2022, what was the toughest climb that you remember? And if you can,
there was one out of is it Lac Ste. Marie, the ski resort?
yes.
And it was like a big climb, but it was also like just shitty weather, so it was like really soft. Like it was just like riding through gravel peanut butter. It was that one was brutal. Yeah.
Okay. And actually, just as an update, that hill is now gone from the route. We've added in something longer and rougher, so you would have a great time. Christina, what was the best view that you encountered on the route? I know you rode all night, so you might not have seen that far during the night, but maybe you did see something very interesting in the night.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think the whole route was beautiful. There's so many moments in Gatineau Park that were just incredible. It's an amazing place. But maybe the dam. What's the dam called? The Pogan Dam?
The Pogan Dam, yes. Yeah.
Pogan
Near
Dam,
Low.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there early in the morning and I had my leisurely sleep in, and I hadn't looked at dog watchers or anything, so I didn't know that there were tons of people who'd passed me in the night. And I remember I was there and it was foggy and it was just so beautiful, and it was a moment of just being like, I'm so thankful that I get to do this biking adventure. It was really beautiful.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to put this, I'd like to have a couple of answers on this one because it's a question a lot of people ask. Tent or bivvy? So somebody that's really into tents, who would like to advocate for tents?
I can
Well, I have
advocate
it.
for tents.
I have a tent. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, although I said I used a bivvy and I normally use a bivvy, the tent is really nice to have for it. It feels like a home, and it's a great shelter. You can change, you can sit up, you can move around. So if you're going to take your time, absolutely a tent. That's all.
Thank you. Yes. One thing to mention is that protection from bugs and respite from bugs in the evening is a nice thing. So if you are going to bivvy, you probably want to have a bivvy with a bug screen, or a tent, or a head net. Navigating. Michael, phone or GPS unit? Which would you prefer to use for navigating?
I would prefer to use my phone with Ride with GPS, but I've yet been able to complete a route with Ride with GPS. Usually halfway through, it just starts to hang up and lock up. And then I switched to Gaia, which is probably the best. But the problem with Gaia is you have to always be looking at the screen, and that burns through your battery on your phone. So my backup has always been the eTrex 20. And yeah, so I try to be flexible.
You have backup. That's an interesting
I have
concept. Excellent.
Oh, plus I have analog as well.
Do you mean that you make cue sheets, or you use a map?
They are somewhat in between. Usually what I do is any parts that look on Ride with GPS or Gaia that look suspect, I will just draw little hand notes on scrap pieces of paper and put them into a plastic bag. And when I get there, I pull them out, put them on my handlebars just in case.
Christina, sandwiches or pizza?
Sandwiches. I think like sandwiches are really underrated as a good like long distance snack. I also boiled a bunch of potatoes for the log driver's waltz. I was really debating how many, but I stuffed all my jersey pockets, and those were like boiled potatoes with salt. Just so good, so easy to digest and really nice.
Okay. I know that Sarah doesn't use gears, so I'll ask Roland, 1x or 2x gearing?
1x is what I use, and probably my preferred. Just for the simplicity of it, I think, having a front derailleur, you could have a hiccup with it, just another thing that could malfunction on you. And I found I had decent gear range with the 1x setup. When I do it again, I'll go with a smaller cassette, because there was quite a bit of like some steep technical climbs along the way that there's a couple hike a bike moments where if I had just a few smaller, a few less teeth in the front, I probably would have gotten over. That might sound like an argument for 2x, but I think I still go 1x just with a smaller chainring.
Okay, excellent. There are many different approaches to why one would come and ride the log driver's waltz. And Roland, seeing as you're on the screen, I'll just ask you what was your why did you do it, and what was your approach?
Yeah, so I mean the why. So back when I first started getting into cycling, this is back in 2017. I mentioned earlier that my wife and I, we joined group rides and bike clubs, but Mike Hall, the late Mike Hall, was actually one of the first like cycling personalities that I found when exploring the sport before getting into any rides really. I almost forgot that he was like kind of my main inspiration into getting into cycling as a sport when I got into all the other disciplines. Over the last couple of years, friends are getting more into gravel riding and then bringing me on board with the gravel rides that they go on. And a friend of my wife's told her about the log drivers Waltz, so it just clicked again. Oh, like this is what I was really interested in to begin with. So let me see if this is something I can do. So that was kind of what got my interest and got me thinking about it again. My approach to it was I wanted to go as fast as possible along the course. I wanted to push myself and see, how close I could get to the fastest known time. So that was really my approach, but also considering that I hadn't really done anything like this before either. So I didn't want to put myself in a bad situation either. But that was my thinking. How can I go fast? So sleep wasn't a priority. Nutrition quality wasn't a priority either. It was just, let's get through this as fast as I can.
Okay. Yes, I remember seeing you. Boom. Okay, that was awesome. So I'll try to find somebody else with maybe a different approach. Matthew, how would you describe your approach to the ride in terms of your goals, in terms of what you were after when you were riding?
I think I just always try to be like, I think I categorize myself as like a fast tour. So I think, with the BT route and the log drivers Waltz, which are about the same distance, I think anytime you go to like the 4 or 5 day range, you kind of get categorized as like a fast tour. So you still have big days. So that's what I mean. I like to spend almost all my day riding and then stop before sunset and, set up camp and whatever. I've always been like that way back, even my cycle touring days from that. So I've never really kind of gotten out of that mold. So I think with every route I do, I always kind of approach it with that same goal.
Right. So you were riding about 160 kilometers a day or so, in that range.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I think there were 3 days. John and I did 160 in a row, but I think there were a couple shorter days, but somewhere in that category. I think it was also because like that year we just all got so unlucky with the weather. It was like, well, it was raining, so you might as well just kind of keep riding because what are you gonna do? Just stop and hang out in your tent all day in the rain? So it was just you got used to being so soggy. It didn't really matter that much anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's true. The weather does impact how one goes. Does anybody have any stories of interesting or interaction with the community members along the way? I know that we have a few trail angels along the way, and then people that are kind of helpful. John, uh, how any interactions that you'd like to just tell us about, or things that you noticed?
Went into this, we found this cafe or sports store in Gracefield. We sort of wandered in there, we're all soaking and stuff, and it was freezing. And these girls made us coffee and gave us snacks. We were sort of getting through our meal, and then we realized the place was closed. And they really didn't even bat an eye. We sort of explained what we were doing, and they gave us some stale croissants or whatever. I can't remember, but I just thought it was just so nice. They didn't say, "Oh, we're closed, sorry, get out." And we hung around there for a while, especially feeling bad after we realized they were closed, and got cleaned up and off we went. And that was typical. Everywhere we went, people were interested. You could ask Matt about the sandwich counter at I forget where that was, Campbell somewhere. But it just was, people were great. I thought it was a really neat experience in that way. And there was lots of little places to stop too, Gracefield, Wakefield, places like that were really cool.
Oh, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Christina.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I know it was, my next stop was in Ladysmith. But prior to that, I think there's like a really big climb, and there was just a gentleman. I think he might know of the route or like what you guys are doing. So he had a big sign up saying like "Riders Welcome" or something to that effect, and he had treats and water, and I think he had a hose I could wash my bike, and just very hospitable. Not what I was expecting, especially at that point in the ride. Just a random guy, it seemed, that was just waiting for us to be there, and that really, gives you a bit more energy to get to the next stop. And like John was saying, everybody that I bumped into, riders and just community members, were all so welcoming and trying to help you as best you can if you needed any assistance.
Yeah, that the spot that you're referring to, there's two neighbors. One picked up that the other one was becoming a bit of a trail angel, and so now they have this kind of little community up at the top of a hill just before you head off into an unmaintained road section. So it's yeah, quite surprising. Yeah, that's very cool. In terms of splitting up the route, because 800 kilometers is a long distance, and you can't, I mean, most of us just don't want to conceive of 800 kilometers all by itself. Maybe I'll ask Sarah to start out on this one, but how do you split up the route when you're starting to think about planning, or do you?
I do and I don't, for me, just because I like to keep moving, but I like to shoot for, depending on terrain, sort of 250 to 300 a day. This is if I know that's my goal, is to go as fast as I can. Doesn't always work. Like on log drivers, my first day, I think I only got to 250. I was frozen and it was a lot slower than I thought I was going to be. But I try to break it up in sort of chunks like that, where I sort of predict that I'm going to be moving at least 16 hours a day. So I'm not the fastest, but I'm going to keep on moving for a long, long time. And maybe I'll be out there for 18 hours a day. And I just sort of split it up sort of in those terms. I've ridden with people before that say they have maybe a 120 mile kind of day. That's their window. And then they're going to sleep no matter where they are, no matter how long that took. And I think that's a pretty great strategy. If you can sort of bite off as much as you can ride in a day comfortably, and then plan for that to be your stopping point. If that's your goal, is just to complete, then that's a good approach. But for me, I usually try to think of just keeping on moving for a good amount of time, depending on how much sleep I've predicted I want to have on whatever route I'm tackling. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it sounds pretty hardcore.
I would break it up into nice chunks, but it's a little different sometimes when you're trying to think of going quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just leap in and say that the first two times that Jennifer and I rode it, we took 7.5 and 8 days. So we went about 100 kilometers a day. We pretty much chose our campsites or stopping places before we left. We really, it was very much when we set out the route as a touring route for 8 days, and so it's been interesting to watch how different people approach it. But I just wanted to make sure that people understand that it's not just a route that has to be ridden like as fast as you can through the night.
Probably better to see everything.
Yeah, like as Matthew, as you were alluding to, you like to stop before dark and set up camp, and So just that there are different ways of looking at it. Wanted to ask people what their strategies were if you camped and stopped, or if you were sleeping. What were your strategies in dealing with the food that you had with you? Because this is a question a lot of people ask. What do you do with food at night or when you're stopped? Let's start with John, and then we'll move on to spread it around.
I have a dry bag that I put my food in. Usually, I forgot when we were going through Gatineau Park, and then I woke up to this sound of this zipper opening, and looked out, and there was a raccoon on the picnic table, carefully opening my frame bags. So I let him have whatever he wanted, but usually I'll put it in a dry bag and sling it up somewhere to keep it safe, especially after that experience.
Right. And near or far from your tent when you do this?
Oh, far from the tent. So if I have, I'll look around for a spot that I can sling it up. So a good 50 feet or something from the tent if possible. Although I don't carry a lot of food, so I try to put things in there like deodorant, toothpaste, toothbrush, anything that would be odoriferous that would maybe like in Gatineau Park there's bears. Any place that you might attract sort of animals like that, I put in there.
Thank you. Has anybody ever had an experience with animals interfering with your water bottles or hydration system if it's got juice in it or residues? Raccoons sometimes will chew the top off of water bottles if it's got sugary sweet stuff on it. It's not a nice thing to experience. Michael, what's your strategy for dealing with food?
I leave it on my bike, leave my bike up against a tree, and I go to bed. And if I hear a noise and I wake up, I needed to get up anyway, so I get moving.
I think we have some stuff on the website on what bear aware practices for storing food. Matthew, what do you generally do? Where do you keep your energy balls at night?
That sounded worse than it was. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm kind of like with Michael there. Like in Ontario and that I'm more prone to just kind of keeping, for better or worse, everything kind of on the bike. I do have to say I agree with Joe. Like people should know that the raccoons in Gatineau are like weapon grade. Like I was in the washroom for 10 minutes and I came out and they were already going through all my stuff, and it wasn't even sunset yet. So just so people kind of are aware with that in Gatineau is that the raccoons are way worse than any chance with any bears there. But yeah, I think it would depend on where I'm riding. Like when I was riding through BC last spring, I was definitely more aware of where I was going to be camping and what potential there is for that. But yeah, maybe I have my head in the sand, but it's mostly just what Michael does. I just keep everything on the bike, a little away from the tent, and go with that.
Okay.
I think that's a good point. That's a good point, Matt, about the Gatineau Park. In any place where there's a lot of human activity, you're going to have more desensitized bears or raccoons. Typically, I just pull over in some obscure place and just crash for 4 hours and get moving again. So I think because I'm in a more remote area that isn't frequented by campers, they tend not to run into those critters.
Yeah, I think you're completely correct with that, without a doubt. I mean, the raccoons, like in Gatineau, have gotten used to feeding off human stuff. And if you're just wild camping in the middle of the forest somewhere, then a lot of the animals haven't got used to that. So there's a lot less chance they're going to get into your stuff, probably.
Thank you both. And anybody have anything else they'd like to add to that question? Which sort of segues into the next question I'd like to ask is, how do you find a spot where you think you can really have a good sleep or have a really good sleep? What do you look for when you are going to wild camp or what have you? Matthew, what's your ideal campsite look like, and how do you choose it?
I think that's a good point because I'm all over the place with paid and unpaid. Um, I think with the unpaid, like the wild camping, I think you just kind of know. You see it and it's just like it kind of, I mean, there's differences. Like if you're just, setting up your bivvy for a couple hours, then like maybe just the side of the trail, it doesn't matter. But I think if you're actually going to like really camp, um, you want to be a little more selective of where you are. Um, like sometimes just like I know like there's those the rail trail on the log drivers Waltz places with like picnic tables, something like that. I mean, those when you get something like that, you're like, oh, this could be a great spot. Um, and away from, I mean, as much as away maybe from civilization as you can, so people aren't wondering what you're doing there. But one thing I have to like mention to people feel like wild camping is this dangerous thing, but I actually get some of the best rest wild camping because so many of the commercial web campsites, especially like in Ontario, they're so loud. Like you have, especially on the weekend, like people are like partying all night, making noises all night, and you just don't get that when you're camping in a more isolated spot. So, um, I would say my preference is actually not doing commercial campgrounds and trying to find my own little spot or with whoever I'm riding with that way. And I find it just more relaxing.
Thank you. Christina, what makes you feel safe either when you're riding or when you're stopping for the night?
Yeah, good question. I think stopping for the night, it really depends on the context. Like, I guess it's different in the log driver's waltz than some other places I've traveled by bike. In general, what makes me feel safe is if I know it's somewhere legal. So if it's like Crown land or in the US, the state forests where you are legally allowed to wild camp. Um, but otherwise, when I really feel like I'm not going to be discovered, um, then I feel best. But I unlike I'd say the opposite with respect to sleeping well while wild camping. I think that's also because I've had many experiences where I have been found. And so I think I kind of sleep with one eye open when I'm wild camping. But I think, yeah, I think it's so personal for people how they feel while wild camping. And I think whatever people need to do to feel safe is totally fine. And I think in general, like again, depending on whether I'm doing something like this where I have a GPS tracker or if I'm just traveling alone in a foreign country, letting people know where I am and having a bit of a sense from locals about where might be best to has proven helpful for me. Eric, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. I was trying to mute somebody else. That's funny. Sorry. Thank you, Christina. Just to follow up that, when you're using a GPS tracker, what strategy do you use when you're going to stop?
Yes, for the log drivers waltz, I borrowed a GPS tracker and I turned it off. Well, actually, the second night I forgot to turn it off before I arrived at the spot, so I just turned it off at the spot that I was already at. And I think maybe the first night I also, but my plan was that I was going to turn it off a little bit before I arrived where I was staying for the night because it felt weird to have like broadcasting my location while I'm passed out for the night sleeping in some random like spot in the woods. But I think in general, having a tracker can make some people feel safer. Again, it's like a really personal thing for people. But I think turning it off before can be a good option, or for some people, maybe having it on and sharing it with friends and family is also a good option too.
Right. And anybody else have experience with what they do with a tracker if you have used one while riding?
I just want to say the same as Christina, the same thought that when I use a tracker, it's good practice. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman and it's a little bit scarier sometimes, but I don't like people to know where I'm sleeping. So I generally turn it off before I'm going to stop somewhere.
Right, and I think that is a fairly common practice, and certainly not just amongst women, but men as well will turn it off. Water. There was a number of questions about water that people wrote in about finding water on the route. I'm not going to ask John or Matt because they're going to just say it rained the whole time in 2022. But oh no, but okay. But serious question. Do you use water filter or pills? And did you have any difficulty finding water? So Roland, haven't heard from you for a minute.
Yeah, water generally wasn't an issue for me. I had two just big water bottles, and I had a frame bag that I had all my food in, so my pockets were empty. So anywhere I stopped, I would get like a Gatorade or another bottle of water and throw them in my pockets. I did have a scare getting from, I guess, riding through Calabogie and on to the next town. It was in the nighttime and I was quite low on water. So I was looking for somewhere to refill. I had a water filter device thing that I ended up using. Didn't taste that great. And maybe if it was brighter out, I might have been able to source a better source of water. Because I think where I got the water from might have been a pond, not the best place. But luckily I didn't need it. I wasn't desperate for water. I did have some on me that got me to the next spot. But I did carry a water filter just in case there was an emergency.
Thank you, Roland. Does anybody else have any thoughts about sourcing water on the route? Any difficult areas to source water, or where was water relatively easy to find?
Eric, I also wrote it when it wasn't raining, and
Oh, that's true.
Water was no problem at all. I didn't think. I mean, you have to be careful. That Sylvania Lodge, which by the way has the best amazing food, if anyone wants to stop there. But from there to Calabogie is quite a stretch, and so you had to make sure you had enough water for that. But otherwise, there's enough places to stop if you've got a couple water bottles and maybe a hydration pack or something like that. I thought anyway. I didn't have a problem with the water.
That's good to hear. Actually, I wanted to, you brought that up about it being a fairly long stretch between Sylvania Lodge and Calabogie. Some people have noticed that it is quite a long way between Sharbert Lake, which is the southernmost point of the route, between there and Calabogie. What strategies, John, you've done it a couple of times now, what strategies did you use in terms of food in that stretch? Because there is no, well, aside from Sylvania Lodge, there's really no resupply for over 120K.
Yeah, so you got to be careful even at Sharbert Lake, because if you don't get there on time, if you're Matt is a fast tourer, I am a slow tourer. If you don't get there on time, they close that coffee shop at some sort of crazy, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something. So if you can fuel up at Charlotte Lake, that gets you to that cheese factory. They seem to be really popular in the first year. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but I mean, presumably you can get, like, who doesn't like a good hunk of cheese when they're bikepacking? And they had beer and they had coffee, and I think they were making pizza. But then you hit Savannah Lodge, where I saw you for dinner there, and Jen the year before I was able to share a table with. Amazing food there. Pack up all your stuff. And so I think that Savannah Lodge really breaks up that stretch. I actually never have thought of that Charlotte Lake to all the way to Calabogie. If there was nothing at that cheese factory or Savannah Lodge, yeah, there would be trouble there. But other than that, it's as long as you know those spots are coming up.
Yes, I think actually I may be thinking back to riding it during the times of lockdown, and where neither of those places were open, and so that did put a different complexion on it. But yes,
that would be a game changer for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And you even camped at the campground at Savannah Lodge before, right?
Yeah, that's actually where I ended up staying twice, and you know, both years I shared my site with somebody else, and then last year there was these really nice people. You talk about people on the route. This guy came over that had a trailer there, and he's like, "Oh, come to our bonfire, tell us what you're doing." It's just so nice. And but I stopped there. That's a good stopping point before you do that long run through to Calabogie, because unless you're going to stay at that Levant station or something, or wild camp along there, it's really not a lot of stuff. So it's kind of a sticking point for me. Do I go on a little farther, or do I stop there? And I think if you're chunking it down, that's a great place to have great food. You can camp there. There's a little laundry thing there if you need it, and you can have a shower.
Wow, sounds luxurious. And actually, I maybe in this particular group there weren't a lot of people that stayed in motels or hotels, but there are motels, hotels, and bed and breakfasts along the route. Did anybody stay indoors at any point?
Yeah, I did actually. After I gave up my self-sufficient attempt, I got to Renfrew, and that day leading into Renfrew, I guess I have what's called a Morton's neuroma on my foot, and I could barely put any pressure on my pedal. So I was looking to get to some place where I could just maybe get it into some hot water and soak my foot. And there was a oh, it's right on the route in Renfrew. I forget the name of it. Is it the Black Mountain or Rocky Mountain Motel? And I stopped there and got a room, and there was no hot water. So I had a really good cold soak on my foot, and that had to be good enough. And then the next day, I stopped every hour to massage my foot to keep moving. But yeah, so I stayed at that Rocky Mountain.
Cool. I'm gonna just take the reins for a minute here. Christina, I'm wondering if you could tell us about dot watching.
Yeah, sure. So some people, if you're familiar with the website or you followed the event last year, you might have seen the commentary from Corey, who had previously raced the Log Drivers Waltz and was kind of doing kind of journalistic coverage of the event, and sharing stories, and he was based in BC, so he was doing it remotely and using kind of reports from social media and people on the ground to inform his commentary. And I'm really stoked that I'm going to be doing that this year. So, and hopefully a bit closer if I can swing it out. I want to actually be on the ground and kind of biking around, maybe with a bit of a fake microphone to put in people's faces, but to capture stories from people, not just people racing, but from everyone who's on this adventure during the Grand Depart, to try and hear kind of why are people doing this? Why bike to kind of remote sections of the world and potentially camp outside and embark on this kind of adventure? And I'm really excited. I'm hoping to speak with people who are doing, trying to go fast, but also people who are touring and people who are riding as pairs. Even I know that's an option too. If anyone's doing the rewind or riding, I saw in the chat someone talking about a tandem. So I'm really excited to get to chat with people and hear some stories and then share them this summer.
When you were riding, Christina, who did you know was following you on Dot Watchers or on the track leaders site?
I knew some of my friends and family were following me. And yeah, I think people found it funny to read the commentary and Corey's updates. And then for Dot Watchers, I had quite a few friends and family who were following the kind of race, which was interesting because there was times where I wasn't following it and I didn't even really want to know where I was relative to other people, and sometimes had friends texting me. But it can be a really fun way to turn this into more of a kind of community feeling, like sharing. If you do decide to do a tracker, regardless of whether you're trying to go fast or just touring, it's a way to connect with people and for people to kind of live your adventure with you and get to kind of see where you're stopping and for how long. And people seem to really enjoy following along, even from other provinces or even countries.
Super. We hear not exactly through the grapevine, but you might have some help with your dot watching.
Yeah, I've chatted with a few people who I got to ride with last year who might not be riding this year, and I'm hoping to rope some of them into to helping with the dot watching. So we'll be a bit of a community of alumni, I think, who will be following along.
Very cool. We're very excited about that.
Thank you, Jen. Christina, it is amazing that you're going to be doing this. I'm aware that we're getting fairly close to time, but I thought what I'd like to do is go round the group one more time and just ask: is there one piece of advice that you would give somebody who was contemplating riding the log driver's waltz? And we'll leave it with that. Your best piece of advice for somebody else who has not yet done it.
I'd always say generous gearing. I know I'm not a single speeder, but I like a big pie plate on the back is helpful for the route for sure.
Go one gear lower than you think you're going to need.
Yes, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. John.
I would say ride your own event. I almost snuck the word race out there. Ride your own event. Bikepacking is the last sort of bastion of being able to ride within yourself and enjoy the events for what they are. Don't worry if people are going past you, or you're catching people or stopping or tracking your time like that. Ride within yourself and ride your own event, and it'll be something that you enjoy. It's and that's what we're doing this for. It's none of us, well, I don't know about, not very many of us are going to make any money doing this. I know I'm not going to turn pro or anything. So you're out there having a good time. It's like Christina said, like talking to people about why are you doing this. Every single person in your event has a different reason for why they're doing it. Ride your own event, enjoy yourself, look around, enjoy the scenery, and the rest will take care of itself.
Wonderful, thank you. And Christina, your nugget.
I guess a bit opposite to what I just said, but similar to John. it doesn't you don't have to do these kinds of adventures in any kind of public way either. Like if you want to sign up for Dot Watchers or the tracker, that's great, but you don't even have to like post on social media that you're going to do this or share this on Strava or anything. I think there's been so much hype now about bike packing and about racing, and it can create a lot of pressure. But this is supposed to be fun. And so if it's more fun for you to just make it a personal challenge, then you don't have to broadcast your adventure if it feels like less pressure for you.
Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, I kind of agree with John. It's like I approach it as I'm here to ride my ride. When I signed up for this, I signed up, I guess instead of being a fast tourer, I'm a slow racer. What was important for me was to ride the complete route, ride it by myself, solo. And I had no clue other than what was on your website, what to expect. So I rode the ride on site without pre-riding any part of the course. I rode as long as I could. I mean, I really like riding at night. I think one of the questions was, what was your favorite view? And honestly, mine was the stars. I love riding at night. So I will ride into the darkness and keep going. And then just find a place to lay down and sleep until I wake up. And which is usually for me is like 4 hours on these rides. So I'll get up and I'll start riding in the dark again.
Okay, thank you very much. Sarah, a piece of advice, parting advice.
Well, there's so much advice to give, which is great, but I'd like to echo the sentiments of everybody before me, just saying, definitely do it and don't be afraid, but it is your own ride, so go out and do it your own way. But in saying that, I also encourage people to do the research and be prepared and take it really easy, for lack of a better word, is just don't sweat the small stuff, because things are going to go wrong. Be prepared for it. Things always get better. So just know that when things are awful or you're cold or you're wet, or it's going to pass. And on top of that, it's just a mountain basically, which is just a hill. So get over it. It's just keep moving forward and everything gets better. All the hard stuff is usually quite short-lived, and then it always gets better. And it's such a beautiful sport. Every tour is amazing. So go out and do it, would be my advice.
Thank you. Roland.
Yeah, I mean, everything that everyone said before me, I second. The Grand Depart is phenomenal. So, the route itself is beautiful, and you can do it outside of the Grand Depart and you'd have a blast. But I've spoken to some friends that are on the fence, so it's 800K, I don't know. And while doing it, I felt the same way, like, oh my goodness, how much more am I gonna have to ride today? But then somebody will pass me that's also on the journey, or I'll pass somebody else that's also on the journey, and it's very energizing and refreshing, and it helped me kind of steer my focus back to okay, just ride. We're just riding bikes here. But having others around you with similar interests on the same path is very helpful. And the Grand Depart, does that. So that would be my tip.
Thank you so much, Roland. And thank you, everybody, for your advice. I think it's a really nice way to finish off. I know we could probably go on for quite some considerable time, but we have reached the end of an hour and a half, and I know that everybody's taken some time from busy schedules. We really appreciate that. One of the most amazing things for us is the community that has developed around the route, and the people willing to give and contribute and be part of it. For us, that's that is the real payback of doing this. As we mentioned, we have this on recording, and so once we've converted it, we'll stick it up on our YouTube channel, and so you can go and revisit it. I'll probably cringe personally, but we'll have that up there. I don't have anything to say other than thank you, and also you know, we do look forward to meeting up with many of you again in person, and some of you that are on the call today. We know that we'll be seeing you in either the spring or in the summer, so that is something to look forward to. Jen, is there anything you want to say at the end?
Yeah, I just would invite people to join our Facebook group. I haven't put it in the chat, but we have a Facebook group, Tips, and it really is a platform to connect with other bike packers, and we'd also encourage people to follow our Instagram account, or if that's your platform, or our Facebook page. It really it helps create the connections between riders.
And actually, all those links are in the signature of the email that you would have got this invitation on. So all those links are at the bottom of that page. You can easily find them. So without further ado, I think I'm going to switch it back to gallery. The official time is over, so we'll stop the recording, and if people want to hang around and chat for a little bit, we're certainly good with that. So thank you once again, everyone.
Thanks to all our panelists and people who have joined from near and far.